Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I have no conflicts of interest to disclose, and I did want to start with a land acknowledgement. So the Community-Based Research Centre has committed to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples here in Canada, and one of the ways that we're doing reconciliation is part of including Indigenous people and Two-Spirit people specifically in the work that we're doing, and I'm very grateful for being able to present on this land and to work with Indigenous communities. And in terms of acknowledgements, none of the work that I'm presenting could be done without our participants across the country here in Canada, as well as our community partners, collaborators, funders, and a large team. Specifically, the National Microbiology Laboratory here in Canada and ReachNexus have provided support, as well as PHAC, the Public Health Agency of Canada. And the Community-Based Research Centre, for those who don't know, promote the health and well-being of people of diverse sexualities and diverse genders here in Canada. We work with many community partners. We think that we do work a little bit differently. So we have a variety of research principles that we apply to the work that we do. And here is just an example of a few of them and how we action them in our work. One thing I do want to highlight is that the HIV self-testing work that we do includes people living with HIV, as they are the ones who have the most knowledge about HIV testing, as they've all gone through that process, and they are the experts in that. We have done a variety of studies in self-sampling and self-testing. For self-sampling, we use dried blood spot, where someone pricks their finger and puts it on a card. And we've also done HIV self-testing, which has only been recently approved in Canada since in November of 2020. So I'll just go through these a bit quickly. So we started in 2018 at Pride festivals, and we collected dried blood spot sampling, and the goal was to end the blood ban for gay men when it comes to blood donation. In terms of the samples, over 3,000 people were able to collect a sample, and 97% of samples were able to be processed by the laboratory. We then moved on to a pilot where we did mail home dried blood spot sampling. We were able to reach over 500 people in British Columbia. We had some issues with return rates. It was about 50% people didn't return it. And part of this was due to outdated postal policies where dried blood spots were not allowed to be sent through the mail, which has actually since changed. Moving on, we took a bit of a pause during the COVID-19 pandemic, as I'm sure many of you did with your own research. And we then restarted in 2021 with a program called Test at Home. We distributed up to 3 HIV self-tests and encouraged people to distribute to their sexual and social networks. And paired with this, we had the Test Now Buddy program, where we provide virtual peer support. Members of our community were trained in HIV self-testing as well as prevention and care, and they were available through text, email, and phone, and most of the interactions actually occurred through text messaging. We also, during the Omicron wave here in Canada, did a community edition of our Test Now program, and we were able to distribute about 800 HIV self-tests during this time, but we experienced some challenges with community-based organizations not having sufficient funding to be able to distribute this work. Currently, right now, we have 3 studies going on. One is called Our Health, which includes dried blood spot sampling for HIV, hepatitis C, syphilis, as well as COVID-19 antibodies. And this is built upon the work that we did earlier. We've reached about 1,500 people. As I mentioned, our Two-Spirit program, so we have done a medicine bundle that our Two-Spirit team has led, and this includes Indigenous medicines as well as HIV self-test and dried blood spot combined together using the concept of two-eyed seeing. And when I did this presentation, we had about 70 folks. We've been able to reach double the number of that through this in the past few weeks. And so this is a really great example of how specific Indigenous focused research led by Indigenous people can reach the folks that need it the most. And right now we're actually running a program called through Sex Now, our biobehavioral survey called Test Now, and this is at Pride Festivals. We'll actually be in Montreal next weekend, so anyone who is a resident of Canada, we'd love to see you there. And we've actually been able to distribute about 1,500 HIV self-test kits. We have had some issues with the outdoor environment, specifically heat and humidity, where there have been some challenges in actually being able to conduct the test, and so that's been one of the barriers that we've experienced. So in terms of who we're reaching, through our mail home program, we were able to reach about 10% of first-time testers, whereas through our community-based distribution programs, we were actually able to reach about a quarter to a third of folks who are first-time testers. And pretty consistently, we'd also reach people about 30 to 38% who had not tested for HIV in more than a year. In terms of acceptability, overall, our communities really do find these types of programs acceptable, and HIV self-testing as well as dried blood spot self-testing. So many of them would use it again, they find it easy to use, they'd recommend it to others, and so these really do work. Their experience specifically with HIV self-testing, the most that we hear from folks is about the convenience, as well as increased privacy, and the fact that we're offering it for free. For drawbacks, no drawbacks is actually the most common thing that has been identified by people, although a small number of folks are concerned about the reliability or find them difficult to use. For the peer support, we also have received really great feedback on this. And so overall, in terms of our peer support program, their satisfaction is quite high. They're really happy with the options to contact us, and also with the knowledge of the peers. The one thing I will add is that while we initially expected there to be a high number of folks requesting peer support, we actually have had a smaller number, so less than 10% of participants in our research actually want the peer support. So while it is an essential component, it shouldn't be a barrier to entry as well. So in terms of the successes and challenges, so we've found high acceptability amongst gay, bi, queer, trans, and two-spirit men and non-binary people for HIV self-testing and dried blood spot testing. Cost has been identified as a barrier to uptake. Our mail home programs were both feasible and acceptable, and this presents an additional pathway that regular testers could use. And our distribution among social and sexual networks were also quite effective. In terms of our venue and community-based distribution, there are barriers to on-site testing, as I mentioned, due to environmental conditions, specifically the heat and humidity with the INSTI test. And we were able to reach more first-time testers than through the mail home program. Our peer and community organizations were effective at distribution, but they really do need dedicated funding and training to be able to effectively distribute HIV self-tests. And lastly, peer support was highly acceptable when it was utilized, and asynchronous forms of communication, texting and email, were preferred in these virtual settings. So I'd like to thank you everyone very much, and this is the organization, Community-Based Research Center, and my email is up there if anyone wants to contact me.